G'day and welcome to episode 14 with wrapping up a couple of projects, the insulation and Open Auto Pro. In the last episode it's time to turn to some new things, wiring being one of them, and getting this wall in behind the cab here. So those are the things I'm going to be working towards next, and we'll see how far we get with all of that in this video. Before I get too carried away with this, I think I probably need to disconnect some of these wires at the battery end. These two wires were powering the interior lights and the reverse camera. Okay, should be safe for me to pull these wires out now. Well, g'day, it's a pretty damp old Friday night here. I haven't done any work on the van for a few days, so I need to get something done. And I know I said the Open Auto Pro project was complete, but I found that there was a little bit of an issue with the reverse camera. It was the image was mirrored, was flipped, and Open Auto Pro surprisingly doesn't have a means for flipping the image. It has a means for rotating it, so you can rotate it 0, 90, 180, 270 degrees, but you can't mirror it. So instead of using the built-in reverse camera function in Open Auto Pro, I have written a little Python script which monitors the GPIO open on the Raspberry Pi and then calls a Raspberry Bird command to act as the reverse camera. So that allows me to flip the image in the appropriate way and get things around the way they're supposed to be. Done all that off camera, just SSH into the Raspberry Pi, upload the script and edit the rc.local file to have that script run at startup like the shutdown script does. But the other thing what I'm going to do just now is the USB port that I put in the other day is actually a powered USB port. It doesn't have to be powered, but it has the capability of being powered, and I decided to add power to that. So on the ignition, on a ignition switch circuit, so that that just provides a bit of extra power. If you get your phone plugged in, it will charge the phone more effectively. So I grabbed another 25 watt buck converter, and I've connected it up to the cable from the powered USB hub, and I'm going to install that now. So part of the reason, of course, for choosing to do this now is because it means I can sit inside in the van out of the rain and not running in and out while it's pouring with rain. And conveniently, I have an ignition switched set of wires right here. This is the wire that used to go to the old reversing camera to provide the ignition feed to it. Much easier to get the heat shrink on before you solder it up. Be a little bit careful when you're using these gas soldering irons that you don't direct the exhaust from the soldering iron onto something you don't want to burn, like your leg. The wind is rocking the van around. Nice bright solder join, that's what I want. So I realised after I'd finished all of that that I had forgotten to connect back in the wire for the amplifier. Bit of a pain, not what I was intending to do, but at least there's an easy fix. Alright, so we're ready to put it back together now. Our power wire into there. Now, find the keys. Yep, right. So the other thing I'm doing this evening is I discovered that the camera that I have been using, which is supposed to be capable of night vision and has these infrared LEDs that bolt on the side of it, when those are on the side of it, it's expecting the area to be lit up with IR, but because the distance to the ground is too great, the LEDs aren't strong enough to illuminate the area, and so it looks like the camera's not working. When I take them off, then the camera doesn't go into that mode. It's still not great at night, but at least you get an image. So I've taken the LEDs, infrared LEDs off, and so I'm going to remove this mount and replace it with this one that I printed without holes for the LEDs. Unfortunately, I did a fairly good job of gluing this one in there, so hopefully I can get it out without cutting myself. There we go. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to drill a hole down here. So I've noticed that, well, this is not waterproof. Water is able to get in, but there's no good place for the water to get out. And I think that's probably going to cause problems. So if I drill a hole here, kind of in the middle where it's the lowest point, it will give the water somewhere to go. G'day, it's late morning on Saturday, and been a little bit of a slow start to the day for various reasons. Though I have had a trip to Bunnings today to pick up some supplies, and although there's wiring things I could be doing, or I've got insulation to fill in all those voids that need filling in, I could do that. But I want to do something that feels like actually building the van, so I'm going to work on this shelf up here and the wall that's going to go between the cab and the living space of the van. So the wall needs to come straight up the back here, but with the seat protruding out into the space a bit, the first thing I need to do is work out where the wall's going to come to so that I can work out how deep the shelf is going to be. I grabbed some 4x2, 90 by 45 as it is here, to use for the wall framing. Now I'm not going to use it as 4x2 of course. I'm going to rip it down to essentially 19 by 42, something like that, which I could buy just all around 19 by 42 from Bunnings, which would cost me quite a bit more than buying building lumber and ripping it myself. So you might ask me, is it really worth spending the time to do that when I could buy timber in the size that I was cutting it down to anyway? And I guess that depends on your perspective. If I were to buy 19 by 42 dressed all round in this length at Bunnings, this many lengths would cost me $120. These cost me $43. So for 15 minutes it took me to rip them down. I think that's money well spent. I don't need it to be dressed timber, so just passed through the saw is fine for what I'm using it for. If I wanted it to be dressed, then I would pay the extra and just buy the DAR timber. But I don't need that for this application. That said, I do have a length of the DAR stuff here, which is left over from something else I was doing one other time. And I'm going to use that to help me get measurements and stuff, because it's short enough to fit inside the van, whereas the other pieces that I've just been working on are too long. So I don't want to cut them down until I know what I want to cut them down to. So get some measurements. Of course, anybody who's ever built a van or made a YouTube channel about building a van will tell you that nothing in a van is straight and square, and they're absolutely correct. So I'm just going to square up off the floor and use the floor as my datum, and everything else just has to be in reference to what's square off the floor. Gives me a start. Now I've just got to mark out around the front where I need to cut it to slot into where it needs to be. It's just a bit of 9mm ply. I just wanted something lightweight. There's not a lot of weight going to go up in here, I don't think. And then my plan is that I will build the wall up from the bottom, and one that goes from here up with the door and everything in it. They'll sandwich this and it'll just lock everything together. So hopefully that works out the way I think it will. So what I'm going to do now is make sure I've got the ply straight off of this member across here, so parallel with that, and then work out how much I need to cut off of it to get it forward as far as I want it to be, and then mark the shape. That's the plan. So it needs to move that way 140mm. What I'm going to do is cut a piece of scrap timber that I've got to 140mm length and use that to scribe. This is by no means going to be perfect the first go, but it's going to get me in the ballpark. Alright, I think that's close enough for the time being. I can now start measuring up to build the wall underneath it here. So this wall will have a door in it for getting through into the cab. Okay, so what I've done here is I have taken a piece of straight timber from there down to the floor, squared it up off the floor, and put a mark. So that's the outside edge of my wall, or the back edge of my wall. So the bottom plate will go there. Then I can just put this piece of timber parallel along here, and that gives me the position of the bottom plate, and then I can build up from there to meet the ply. Okay, what I'm doing here is I've got my bottom plate, and then I've got the piece that's going to connect to the ply, under the ply. On this piece I've marked out my locations of where I want the vertical pieces to go. Let's call them studs, shall we? And so now I'm just going to transfer those marks onto the bottom piece. And the way that I know where the bottom piece needs to go is on one of them. While I had my vertical piece in the van, I squared it up to the bottom piece and marked its location there. So I've lined those up, then I'll square all the marks across, and then I can go ahead and assemble this part of the wall. A little bit more work to do on the wall yet, but it's taking shape. Just got to run the other wire, the actual feed wire, so this one just loops from the back one to the front one, and I need another wire that goes from here down to where the fuse block is going to be. In the near future, I'm going to have more time to work on the van during the day, so that's great. I'll be able to get a better run at it, so hopefully we'll start to see things progress more quickly. Stick around for that. This is going to be the end of episode 14, so I hope you've enjoyed this. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. You know what you think of how things are going. We'll see you for episode 15. Thanks for joining me.